Hello, and welcome to SonarFeed, episode 277. We Fan. I'm your
Male
producer, pseudo co-host-ish person, Tom Bureau, a.k.a. Bougie Hooli, and to my left, your right is
Mickey Turner. You can find me on the Twitters at TurnerESQ.
How many Instagrams do you have right now? Like 8?
Only 2. I think two Instagrams and 3 Twitters.
How many Snapchats?
Oh, God. 1, and that's
Too
twice
many.
as many. Twice as many as
4x
I need.
too many?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a couple weeks since we were here. We had Memorial Day. I decided to not leave the lovely Garden Island last week and blew off.
Life?
Renton, sorry. I did work.
Oh, okay,
By the way,
well.
working from Kauai is amazing because roosters wake your shit up at like 5 a.m. and they're like, well, I won't imitate them, but
Please
they
do not.
literally tell you to go to work. And then I was done at like 2. Hawaiian
time, yeah.
And then you're like, oh, now I understand why people want to be like freelance writers and shit and live in Hawaii or Mexico or wherever.
Is that a thing?
God, it is. I mean, they can't afford to live
Life-
there.
yeah, life
But
goals.
they choose to.
Yeah.
Watch out for the birds. They're coming through like crazy. So, anyway, it's been a couple weeks since we were here last. The Sounders have been...
Not good.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Not good.
Bad. Anyway, so not a great Sounders run right now. I think, did we both predict 7 points? I said 7.
I said
Mickey's
4.
like 1. I said
Yeah.
1.
No, I said 4. 4 out of the 3
All right,
games.
so you're a lot closer than I was, and neither of us were right at all.
No. It
So, if you had 1 point, you win.
I don't think anybody probably had that going
Like
into these
no
games.
one, like LAFC did not call 1 point for Sounders on this road trip. And by the way, LAFC, good job not playing any matches during Gold Cup
Yeah.
or this.
It's a good way
FIFA
to
break.
win by not playing.
Weird how that worked out for them. Strange. Anyway, so we have a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah.
We've got what's actually been a really fun World Cup so far.
Yes, very fun.
I have watched games in the early morning hours and on the replay. In fact, one game I've watched twice. It's been actually super enjoyable. Today I went to, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but went to the 90 today,
Oh,
which
I'm
the Sounders are opening
thinking
for
about
the noon
doing
games.
that tomorrow.
Same.
Yeah.
People in my office have moved their schedules around. You're like, weird. Everyone's got this 11:30 to 2:30 period blocked on their calendar. I wonder why that is.
Yes.
Women's World Cup has been super interesting.
Yeah.
I think so far. So there's been some cool stuff we can dig into. for a
USA
second.
finally playing tomorrow.
Obviously, yeah. USA.
They're
playing
the last
super
game,
late, right?
Well, yeah, it's a new game, and so it's literally the last game of the first set of matches.
So we've got that. We've got Sounders, and I think we should talk a lot about Tacoma.
Yeah.
And there's some news is maybe not the right word, but some cool stuff to talk about them playing at. What are we saying? Estadio Cheney. Is that what we're going with right now?
I can dig that.
Shouts to Nate Bowling and a few other folks that are trying to make that a thing. I'm actually a fan of Estadio Cheney. But no, I
can
think
get on board.
Big crowd expected
Huge.
on Wednesday night.
They're probably going to sell out. They're only 500 away from maxing it out, and they probably have room for more just because of the configuration of Cheney.
For sure.
They could probably
And
get around
Punch
7 if they
Punch
wanted.
In the chat drops, and then the U.S. men's national team said, "Hold my beer." And by beer, I mean one of those shitty Heineken 0.0 beers from those awkward commercials on TV too often right now.
Yeah, that was not good.
And we've got some Champions League we could probably touch on. There's like 15 things that we could.
Actually, I would stay away from the Champions League. That was a horrible game.
I mean, it was not a
watch.
great game,
Yes.
but it's interesting stuff that's happened since then.
Sure.
By the way, did you see that throw-in that Gareth Bale had the other night?
Someone told me about it. Was it you who told me
It
about it?
might have been me,
Yes,
actually.
I
Yeah.
think it was you who
So
told me about
that
it.
wasn't to intentionally load that. I was just trying to play
Yes.
like, oh, this is an organic conversation. He like picked up a ball kind of on the run in the technical area and chucked it to like the circle at the top of the area. The ball ended up being saved, but it was one of those like, isn't that a finesse player? Like, what are we even doing taking that throw in? And it's one of those things where we're used to seeing like Kelvin Leerdam or like Brad Evans and other like real technical players taking, and somebody who's on what, 80 million or some stupid amount of money. Actually, that might have been just his transfer fee.
Yeah, I was going to say his transfer fee. I think they want 80 to 100 to get rid of him, and he makes like 17 a year net.
Cool.
In salary. And I think those are, I think those are euros or whatever. But regardless, so he's around $20 million just in salary for the next 3 years. So anyway.
So there's that. There's obviously some Sounders players playing for the men's national team right now. Some. I mean, you
mean all?
Well, for the men's national team for the U.S. Some of the Sounders are playing for their national teams. And by some, I mean 50% of them, approximately.
Yeah, I think they're down to 9 with Brad Smith coming back.
Cool.
So, yeah, it's...
Moment of silence for the Sounders supporter shield attempt this season.
Yeah, it's pretty much gone.
Oh, gosh. Chad Marshall retirement? That was since the last episode, wasn't it?
Oh, was it really?
It feels like eons. It's been 2-3 weeks. But
3 weeks, yeah.
Really, but 2 Mondays. So basically everything has happened. We had Sounders bowling with Sounders yesterday. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that we missed? Game of Thrones, I think, ended since we were here last.
That means nothing to me, guys.
Donald Trump tried to pretend that he had anything to do with Mexico choosing to change its policies. And by change, I mean do nothing different. Anyway, so it's Monday. It's 80.
Yeah.
We're chilling in downtown Renton at the lovely Berliner Pub.
4th and Main. There you go.
In what order are we supposed to do that again?
Yeah.
We're
Dave? We're a little rusty.
We should text Dave.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks. I think he bought a new car or something today. He's doing like actual life things. Weird.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I got nothing. So basically everything has happened since we had a show previously.
Yeah, the Sounders Open Cup is going to be fun.
Let's start there.
Yeah,
because it's probably the
fun
most
stuff.
constructive thing we can talk about tonight.
Yeah.
So Open Cup 7:30 Wednesday, Estadio Cheney, Tacoma, Portland
Cheney
Timbers.
Stadium. If you need the translation.
Wow. Thanks for that. So today, Defiance were out there tweeting that they had sold all but 500 tickets. And I think some of that's dependent on what they open and what they don't, and standing room or whatever.
After that, they announced they were opening some party deck
but even
seating.
so, if I'm going to guess, they're probably going with what's potentially open for Defiance, all up.
Yeah.
And if they're within 500 tickets of that,
you understand why they moved that game to
That's super cool.
from Starfire to Cheney. I mean, there's really no comparison between the two. You've got about 50% more capacity, concessions, and better beer and drink options, better food options. The seating is much nicer. The view is much nicer. They'll be on grass. The only thing really that Starfire has over Cheney is the location relative to the Sounders fan base. And I'm not sure I would say that it's all that much better, just generally speaking, but because obviously the fan base is mostly in the Seattle and surrounding areas.
But that's where
it's obviously Starfire's got a better location. But
if
aside
they've
from that,
sold this many tickets at this point, I can complain all I want, but I'm still making plans to meet up with Mark at 3:30 or 4 o'clock on Wednesday and go to Tacoma. So,
right. Yeah, I mean, people are gonna make it happen, and I'm not really here for the complaints about the game, the location of the game. at this point, just because I think it'll be an excellent experience. And, I don't live in Tacoma. I live, in the midpoint, I guess, Federal Way. So it's a little easier for me, obviously, to get down there if I wanted to drive and had to work, relatively late. But again, it's one game. It's going to be a lot of fun, and there's not really any real excuses unless you just do not have a way to get down there
Or you just
due to
choose
transportation.
to not go.
If you choose to not go, because there are bus options. Granted, they are limited, especially getting out of there. It's not a situation I would want to be in to try to get out of Cheney Stadium and try to take the bus up to Seattle. That sounds like an absolute horror show. So that is a problem. But aside from that, I think it's going to be great. It's going to be a fun experience. It's going to be 80+ degrees outside, so you can just sit up there in your shorts and watch some soccer. And some people are grumbling at the temperatures.
She's shaking her head side to side with this look of utter dismay. And she also pointed out in the chat that Starfire has ices. Just saying. So basically, you're about the ices. Bread is about the ice cream of the future, and both of you are super pissed that there's no Rainier at the Rainier Stadium. Is that what you're trying to say?
I will be consuming none of those things. So
yeah,
yes.
So I mean, it depends where you are.
So
there's a lot of smoke, though. It's happening.
How?
Yes. So, welcome to summer.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Population.
As a person
North
likes
America.
Summer,
yeah.
I'm wearing purple shorts and my Cascadia shirt. What? No.
So. So how was ECS?
Purple.
Oh, well, those are quite summery. Actually,
anyway,
I like them.
You were gonna say.
No, how was ECS as far as sold out tickets? Good group coming down.
Yeah, I think we have 260 or something like that is the number for the multiple sections that ECS has.
Yeah.
Amusingly, there was a section behind general admission that may or may not be pleased with the outcome of what's going to happen in front of them, and that's super cool.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's going to be very interesting. I mean, it's not a Defiance game, so one would think there'd be more latitude towards a couple of saucy words here and there.
It's honestly going to be fine. After all of that had happened, was that only last year? It feels like so long ago. After all that happened, Larry Herrera and a few of us, Heather Satterberg and myself, had a lot of good conversations with the Rainiers, still S2, et cetera, ownership at the time. And they totally understood the situation. Yeah. At the end of the day, Capo's going to call for songs, and that's going to be the end of it. Also, Portland, fuck them. Yeah. Sorry. Don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, where is Portland?
They are, I believe, down the third baseline and up.
Okay,
so they're in one of the decks somewhere. They are somewhat stuck.
They're not behind home plate like all the sports groups here for the Defiance.
I don't believe so. I don't remember the exact sections, but we had gotten an email about it a couple days ago because we asked that question. Again, like, it's a weeknight. They want to play. They're going to travel. Like, know it's coming. No, they had no idea. Different thing.
Yeah. I assume the Sounders are on that.
I think for this, they recognized that it was going to be a whole nother animal. I think we're going to get the appropriate attention for what this is on a Wednesday night. And it's this interesting thing, and I bumped into Taylor Graham today, and maybe we can get into a little bit of this about transition into the Women's World Cup discussion in a minute, but bumped into Taylor Graham today and was just talking about the dynamics of playing here versus Starfire and like how this would work out for the rest of Open Cup. And he's like, yeah, it's interesting because it's a different like ownership group this
Yep.
year versus last year. So when you had the S2 T2 dynamic, it was sort of Sounders, sort of Rainiers, sort of S2, and this is like a whole nother
Yeah, this
situation.
is Sounders
So
Timber
it's
is just in a different
Rainiers,
location.
Defiance House, Sounders are playing there situation,
Yeah.
which is just a very, very different thing. I think it's going to be fine. Honestly, from a security and just like fan dynamics and whatever, I expect it to be exactly what we think it's going to be or would like it to be.
Yeah.
Because I think the team's committed to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that at all. I am curious to see how many people the Timbers travel up, because it's usually obviously pretty good, but it is a midweek game, and it
You
was
never know.
relatively
No
short
one in
notice.
Portland has jobs, though.
Yeah.
So they're all going to probably travel up. They'll all probably take Amtrak. It'll be fine. They'll be
Yeah.
hanging out. Yeah. We can
So-
shit talk all day.
Yeah.
No, I think it's going to be good. I mean, we'll get to predictions and some other discussions later, and I think
Yeah,
I'd like to
talk
touch
about
on
the
depth
lineup
and some of
and
the lineup
potential
implications
lineups.
or
Yeah.
potential lineup implications. Because I think we saw earlier, you and I were talking. I was peeking at your computer, and who was it? AOC and
Sam Rogers
got called into the U23
training camps.
Yeah.
and they're gone.
Yeah, so gone 2
they-
days ago. or a
Yeah,
day
they will
ago,
not
right?
be here for the game. I mean, Rogers obviously wasn't a Sounders player, but he certainly would have been an option for the game. And
But you've got Danny Leva
yeah,
potentially. And by
I'd say
potential,
more
I
than
mean
I'd say more than
starting.
potential. I'd say more than potentially.
So we can talk predictions and some other specifics a little bit later. Let's maybe dig into. Let's go to the hard conversation first and talk about Sounders since we were last here. So
Yeah,
let's see. Today is is it really? So it's the 10th.
yeah, we're getting to mid-June here.
So we were here after the SKC loss, right?
Were we?
I
God,
think
it's been
so.
so long.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
there was. Oh no, it was before that.
I'm
So
pretty sure it was
after
before.
Philly.
Yeah, after Philly.
So we missed the SKC travesty, own goal,
In Dallas.
and then
yeah.
what the fuck happened in Canada?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a rough 3 games. This, 0-3. There's not really
So I'll
anything
just,
but to say about it except it was awful.
to preface, I talked to Taylor Graham today in person, and I said, of all of it, as bad as it was, the SKC thing is the most unacceptable of all of it. And it was all bad. Not to say any of it is good
Yeah.
or acceptable, but the worst part was a team that was brutalized by injuries had to make a emergency signing from Swope Park Rangers, let the literal one really good player on
Yeah.
their team burn them
Yeah.
not once, not twice, 3 times.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
It was
bad.
It was a poor display, and they had chances to win that game besides. I mean, their lineup didn't end up being as bad as I thought it was going to be. I mean, I thought they were going to have to bring up 3 or 4 Swope Park Rangers. They mostly
Stay
had
Swope.
Yeah, stay Swope. They mostly had their starting lineup, with some
For sure.
exceptions.
But you lost
But-
Nemeth on
Yeah.
what, yellow or
Red card.
Red card. Straight red, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Zuzi
and
Gutierrez and
then it still
yeah.
didn't matter. They straight up got beat. That
Yeah.
wasn't like you happened to lose in the 74th minute.
No.
Something you got beat.
Yeah, they let the best player, their best player, I should say, who was available, and he's good. He causes havoc for a lot of teams, but he's containable. You would think that their tactics would have been more designed to close him down, maybe to man mark him.
He's
to
the
take
new
him,
Dom Dwyer.
Yeah, I remember when they were really down. The Sounders were down in personnel against Atlanta, and they basically had Jordy Dellum. Mark Miguel Amaro and did a great job. Basically took him out of the game and were able to get a draw even with a red card. You would have thought they would have come up with some kind of plan to basically take that player out of the game and said anybody else is going to beat you. and they let him, kind of skate and slalom by their defense on multiple occasions. That was a rough game for Buana, if I recall correctly, playing on the left, and just couldn't really stay with Russell. Couldn't provide really any, defensive assistance. And I think he came out. He came out early. I want to say maybe came out in like the 50th minute or something like that, if not earlier. And it was just, that again was an easily winnable game, and they just did not show up on defense for it. And they, as you said, they got beat fair and square. They had to, score a goal just to make it close.
So something mentioned to me today was there's a little bit of, I'm going to paraphrase, this isn't the word that was used, was like apathy. Like there was just some sort of like mediocrity, like that tore its way through. That honestly was like, it wasn't like one player was the problem. Like the 2016 SKC loss.
Yes,
Was
considered the worst
big-time
loss.
years, I'm going to go watch this ball move on the field-ish thing. Like, this felt everywhere, the SKC match. Like, it felt just weird.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's
it's not
the
like
only word I can use for it.
I mean, they on offense they were fine-ish. Leardom was really good offensively in that game, and Rui Diaz got a goal, a good goal, and they had, as I said, they had multiple chances, in the last 10 to 15 minutes to at least pick up a point. So you score 2 goals on the road, you hope that you're going to at least get a point out of the deal. So it was mostly just the defensive performance and not having an answer for Russell, which. Again, it seems like the answer there would have been to just mark him personally off the field.
At some point, don't you just go in at a guy? Like, take your tactical fouls, do what you need to. Like, just peeking at stats right now, even just straight up fouls, we're 17-7.
Yeah, SKC fouled more than
the
Sounders.
17.
Yeah, that's their MO.
And 53% possession. And again, everyone took 2 yellows. But at some point, don't you just go, wow, they're playing their game and are beating us? We got to do something different.
On the road, they've just been tough to figure out this year so far. I mean, granted, you're not always going to have... Yeah, the Sounders. Granted, you're not always going to dominate possession and be playing loose and flowing football, but they've bunkered... I don't even want to call it a bunker, but they've absorbed pressure in most.
That's a better way to say it, because it wasn't like bunker counter.
No.
That was like, we got this, let's go.
No, yeah, they absorb pressure, and they probably do it a lot more than is even their comfort level. I mean, Schmetzer's, I think it's fair to say a defensive-minded coach, or he focuses on defense, but they've certainly this year gone out and attacked quite frequently. So it's just on the road, it's just been, as you said, weird, their performances, and it's tough to quantify.
And that's the best word I have for it.
Yeah.
I hate that, but I don't know what else to say. Like, it's just it's so atypical of, like, forget the core, like the team as a whole.
Their ethos.
Schmetzer-led team. Ethos, like that thing. Like, to me, apathy or any sort of, like, mediocrity, Schmetzer, to me, seems like the first dude that's just going to, like, jump up on the bench and stomp that out. Yeah. And the fact that it's made it through more than one match is surprising.
Yeah, obviously they haven't been fully healthy, although, they had mostly a lineup that should have been able to get a result in Kansas City especially. If not, they were missing Nico, obviously, in the Dallas game, and I'm sure we can talk about that as well. So it's hopefully when they win and if they get their lineup back, they will kind of get out of this malaise on the road. I mean, again, it hasn't been as prevalent at home this year, especially early on. Obviously, they were fantastic. But they, in their last, when they were winning at home towards the end of this, before they went on the road, they were still grinding out wins, and they had to come back against San Jose. So it's not like it's been what it was to start the season.
Yeah.
Since the start of the season, which is concerning. And again, hopefully this is mostly injury slash suspension slash international call-ups related.
That
but
last
that's
bit,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
The first two, I don't agree with so much. Like, if you can't absorb an injury here and there, you're not a top tier club. You're just not. And the comment I made to Jeremiah Oshan today, or I made in general on Twitter, was about depth. Because I don't believe the Sounders actually have depth at the tier of the type of club they think they are and portray themselves as. Forget MLS for a second. Just like be better. That's it. And went back and forth with
Can I get a
Jeremiah.
water? Yeah, just water.
Went back and forth with Jeremiah about it. Talked to Taylor Graham about it today. I just like, to me, the drop off, like Sounders 1 to like 15, real good. Sounders Academy, real good. Sounders 16 through Defiance, not real good. And
yeah, I saw some of that conversation that you had with
and I could be
Jeremiah.
completely off base. It just feels like for the team the Sounders play themselves as, the drop off is like, I do this at work. Like if someone gets sick and someone's boss's boss's boss is working at 2 a.m. to like fill in for them, that's a problem. And I feel like there's a lot of precipitous drop off from one to backup at basically every position except maybe
The
Will
midfield.
Bruin
Yeah. Thanks.
and maybe outside back
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, some of that has obviously been cured by the here, I'll move that. By the signing of Jones.
For sure.
And they have additional resources that they're going to be able to come in with the summer with. They've still got a DP /
Yep.
TAM guy they can bring in depending on how that goes. So, again, these guys haven't been here in any, consistent way since I can't even think. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but it's been a while since they've had a fully fit team, or at least recently fit, where you're only missing like one guy and you can just plug in somebody else. Like, let's say Victor Rodriguez is out, but you got everybody else, and so you've got Henwala Buana playing with 10 other of your regular starters. Right now, obviously, they've got less than that, and in fact, they've got it's almost all reserves at this point.
But the drop
save
off,
Victor Rodriguez
just
and
seems
Fry.
so precipitous. But like at one position here and there, when you're like, well, we're already down 2 outside mids or whatever, like fine. But like 5 positions, you're like, who is starting?
Yeah.
Like seriously?
Yeah. I don't know if that's any different. The Sounders are any different than anybody else in MLS
I guess
on that
I just
front.
don't feel like that, quote unquote, the top teams in MLS have this level of breakdown.
It's tough to
for a
say
month.
it's tough to say because teams like LAFC
Don't play during Gold
so
Cup
we have
and
no frame of
international
reference.
breaks. Weird.
And then there's a couple other teams that just don't lose as many international players, so they're able to weather these international
But that's
breaks
where, like, honestly,
without
the
having a problem.
strategy shouldn't. But like, if the drop off is gonna be that great because we happen to sign better players at the top tier, literally every year, as a function of the schedule, Sounders will lose 5 to 10 players for 2 months if you add it all up.
Yeah.
If we know that and you literally can't afford, like, you buy 6s because you can't afford 8s. Don't buy a bunch of 10s. Like, stop. Like, if 10 people of your 18 are in their national team, and you don't have
The cap
like
space.
a standard deviation amount of players, like you're 2 standard deviations away in starters for half the team, don't do that. Like, either you're good at the cap or you're not. Being good at the cap and getting a bunch of starters and like, yay, look who we negotiated with because we're Seattle, is fucking awesome until you're trash for 2 months. every year. So, like, between now and, like, Jeremiah said this to me back today, between now, so the Open Cup, and, because you have to count it at this point, it's important. They're not winning the Supporter Shield right now.
No.
Sorry.
Unless LASC falls
So,
apart.
between Open Cup, Vancouver at the end of the month, and probably that Atlanta-Portland week,
Yeah.
mid-July, let's see what happens. And if there isn't, like, strong recovery, we're going to know what this team is at that point.
Yeah, I mean, they've got, that Vancouver game's probably going to be tricky because, we'll talk about the U.S. national team in a bit, but assuming the
Wait, you mean the women's
the
team?
men's national
You mean the
team.
actual national team?
Yeah. We'll
Sorry.
leave the successful national team. We'll set that aside for the moment.
Got it.
So you've got the men's national team who we suspect or hope, depending on your point of view, will be able to make it through the knockout stage, in which case you're not going to have Roldan and Morris. And the problem with with the Gold Cup in general is the USA is in the group with Trinidad and Tobago, Jovan Jones, Panama, Roman Torres, and two of those four groups or teams in that group are getting through to the next round because that's the way it's set up. So, yeah, Guyana is probably going to be finished last, but you're still going to be missing either Roldan and Morris or Torres or Jones. One of those four at least will be back if the U.S. are terrible and continues on current track. Maybe you get Roldan and Morris
they're
back.
not going to change their tactics.
But
Greg Berhalter.
Yeah.
So cool.
So, yeah, maybe we'll see Roldan and Morris back for the Vancouver game at this rate. So you've got you got that game that's going to be tricky because you're still going to be missing some players. And then you've got, at the start of July, a really nasty road trip to New York to play NYCFC. And then
like
to
the
Columbus.
next day,
Yeah.
you're going to fly out to the East Coast,
Yeah.
probably.
Mhm.
Saturday.
Saturday.
Probably Saturday.
Yeah. The game.
Maybe Sunday. And you fly during the day. Game's Wednesday, right?
Well, Wednesday, but the problem obviously is for the Vancouver game. It's late at night,
Right.
So they'll
bus
unless
back.
they charter a flight,
Right.
and they're leaving Sunday, and then so they'll get into New York
and
and
then
do their
you're
thing.
immediately going to Columbus.
Yeah, who's having problems too? But again, as we've seen in the Kansas City and Montreal games, that doesn't mean a whole lot necessarily if the Sounders aren't at full strength. And Columbus is always a tricky place to play. The Sounders,
Again,
are not very good
any
there.
away match
Yeah.
is a tricky place to play.
Yeah,
It's about
especially in
being in the
MLS.
game versus getting stomped. And right now, Sounders, multiple away games have gotten stomped. Doesn't matter if the game ends 3-2, 2-1. They've gotten beat bad multiple times.
Yeah. Well, I think they're all egregious in their own ways. I mean, obviously the Kansas City game, you let one guy beat you. In Dallas, you beat yourself. And then in Montreal, you just kind of fall apart in a 10-minute stretch. All of those games could have been.
Do you know how to say that in French Canadian?
I do not.
Okay.
So excluding the Kansas City game, because again, as we said, they just kind of got beat there. So it's not probably fair to claim that they could have won that game. But the Dallas game, they could have won if they just had managed not to put the ball in their own net. Montreal, they were winning in the 70th minute.
Right.
And just Lirda makes a crazy foul for a penalty. So it's I asked Messer about it in practice. He said the last three results were not good. I mean, that's really all he could say.
So it's fun to again have a discussion and be contrarian, but like 3 real bad matches in a row.
Yeah.
It's the first time I remember that forget losses and actually looking at schedules over all-time Sounders or anything. This is as bad as I've felt after a month of soccer in a while.
That's
it does
probably
not feel great.
Yeah.
At any level. Depth feels bad. Players are on national teams, and
I'd say maybe
and
2015 was worse.
red card wedding era.
Yeah. Because
That was
at that
awful.
point, you lost Dempsey to a longish suspension. You lost Oba to a long injury, and then they just couldn't score for 10 games.
So one of the better times in Sounders history.
Yeah.
That feels great to think about.
Yeah. Well, I'd say that was worse than this stretch.
So far.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, yeah. There's 3 more games. They could. They
Like,
could
let's
only get
through
one.
Wednesday.
Yeah. If they only have one more point out of the next 3 games, then there's going to be a lot of questions to be asked. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of answers besides, well, we're going to get a DP again, and they'll hang their hat on the good start. But that's obviously not overly refreshing. And at that point, right now they're 3rd, I think, in the West. And so, they're still in a decent position. But again, if you can only get 1 point out of your next 3, then you're down to 5th or 6th. And then you got to start, clawing your way back up to try to get, at least a top 3 seed so you avoid LAFC.
Right. So 3rd right now. Wait, 16,
And I think,
16 matches played.
Yeah,
So
so they got a couple
everyone's
of
at
games
16,
in
which is
hand
great.
here and there. Yeah.
But, like, Houston's only played 13.
Yeah. Houston, again,
and are only 2 points behind.
Houston, I would not predict to keep up their pace. That's just my personal prediction.
I think
but
there's
I
a
know what
couple
you're
things,
saying.
Like, even the goal differential is now only 5.
Yeah,
Which
well, you
changed
lose.
real fast.
Yeah.
Like, I feel so bad.
Yeah, they're
for
minus
Steph.
3. Yeah.
You're like, really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just.
But yeah, we're just gonna have to. This is the team that
What
they're
about
gonna
the
have
plus 26
for
that
LAFC.
is?
Yeah, yeah. Everyone should probably just
For context,
scroll down
Sounders
and move
have
past
26
LAFC at this
goals.
point. Yeah.
LAFC is plus 26.
Well, that's the same for pretty much everyone, isn't it? Though
No.
they're just blowing everybody away.
It's dumb.
So people should just until LAFC does something to bring themselves back to the pack, everyone should probably just ignore them and hope they win all their games against Western Conference opponents because you're not going to catch
Beat
up.
everyone else,
Yeah.
so you get to run your way up.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly what you should do at this point. They're not even worth worrying about at this point until they start losing some games, or the Sounders start go on a major winning streak and you're annoyed that LAFC won't lose. Then sure you can complain about LAFC, but at this point, just
So let's talk about
Scroll down.
good soccer for a minute. So we've had since Friday Women's World Cup
Yep.
happening in France. So we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 matches.
3 more tomorrow, right?
Some
Yeah,
pretty fun soccer
yeah.
all up.
Yeah, I would say I was up for the 4:30 game on. It must have been Saturday. I think it was Saturday. I can't
Which
remember.
game? The Germany-China?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't believe I was up for that game. That's absolutely insanity.
It was an interesting match. I watched it yesterday. Finally.
Oh, a little belated.
I was sleeping.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a very good tournament to start off with. It's tough. Australia is probably the most surprising result, losing to Italy.
Yeah.
But maybe I think people possibly overrated Australia a bit based on their previous, not
Yeah.
that they had overwhelming success, but they did some damage in the tournaments. And obviously the African teams have been fun but disappointing in their own way because they just haven't been able to break through as of yet. So it's tough to get really too excited about it without seeing them, have a little bit more success. But they're still kind of they're on the upwards curve of development, along with much of women's soccer domestically and internationally. So,
Well, I think it's hard to say against some of the teams they played against, like South Africa, Spain. Don't know what to expect from this.
Yeah.
Nigeria, Norway. I could guess. A lot of people called draw, which was interesting, and then 3-0 torching.
Yeah.
And then Canada today,
Yep.
winning 1-0 over Cameroon. That Spain-South Africa game, I have to tell you, I could watch it again.
Yeah, it was
And
an entertaining
I watched
game.
the highlights first,
Especially that
and
odd
then
red
went
card.
back and rewatched it. That first goal for South Africa,
Oh,
that's
yes.
a great goal.
Yeah.
And player had come up. It was basically get her the ball on the left side, let her smoke her way up the left wing, come up. Her first time, she literally did too many stepovers. Like, you saw it.
Eddie
the
Johnson
announcer
special.
said it. They got nothing out of it. And then minutes later, ends up in a similar situation and just goes, I'm taking this shot, and swings to the far right and, like, just nails the spot. Like, beautiful, beautiful goal. Like, as all-up soccer goes, you're like, that's why you watch this game.
Yeah, it's been a lot of storylines so far, and obviously the U.S. Hasn't got to play yet, so we're going to, they should obviously destroy Thailand tomorrow, so that's going to be a goal fest. And then Sweden is taking on, I can't remember who.
Dude, there's a lot. It's
who's Sweden?
So it's Chile, Sweden.
Okay.
And then the first match at 6 Pacific is New Zealand, Netherlands.
Okay, yeah, lots of fun stuff. The interesting thing, obviously, from a on the field standpoint, but kind of off the field, has been the VAR. That's been, I don't know. I think the offside rule has been kind of extended to the point of absurdity at this point. I understand exactly why they're doing what they're doing, but there's people who are, I can't remember which game it was. It may have been the Norway game, but there must have been like 20 offsides, and every single one of them, they would let the play continue for about 10 seconds. Then they would finally raise the flag, even though it was clear from the outset that it was an offside. And again, we understand why they're doing that. They've been instructed to keep the flag down just in case a goal is scored, so they're not overturning, dangerous plays that result in goals. But it's just at this point kind of, again, it's a bit absurd at this point, and I'm not sure what the solution is, because again, if it's a close play and it's a goal and you prematurely called offsides and have ruined, taken away a goal from a team at this level, it's going to raise, people are going to complain.
Sure.
But I just don't know if what we're doing now is the solution to that potential problem.
So I thought I heard yesterday when they were just remarking, I watched the recap show late at night. Late at night Pacific time, which was like next day.
Oh, like the
in
10:30
France.
show.
Yeah. And they were just talking about how none of the leagues that any of these players play in have VAR. Like none.
Yeah.
All
That's
up.
not surprising. That's not
Which is really
surprising.
interesting, 'cause I would've
They
thought
barely had
maybe there was
VAR
one
for this
too.
tournament. They
Yeah,
barely had
this
VAR
is
for the tournament.
First time they've played with VAR.
Yeah.
And like, as somebody who again has seen it now here at MLS and watches a lot of TV, you almost forget about it, like how much it would change the dynamic of play for you. But like as players go, like even your celebration, you're like, oh, they're gonna review this, okay, whatever. Like it's in the back of your head the whole time.
Yeah.
And if you've never experienced it before, it's probably like, the first time you see anything or do anything, or I don't know, you go to the self-checkout at the grocery, or like apply it to anything. Like something is different in the general dynamic of something you've done a million times up till that point.
Yep.
And that's where I would say maybe for the first couple rounds, you're right. Like, is it going to change the way stuff happens?
Yeah, I do not. Again, I don't know what a solution is to the issue. When they, they're using a fair amount of men for VAR because they just, FIFA, as is their wont, was behind the 8 ball and decided that they didn't need to train a sufficient amount of women to
It's
to
really
use
funny
use
because
it,
all,
and so
I
now
think
you've got this kind of
every field
mishmash
official I've
of
seen has been a woman.
yeah. Well, yeah, there's obviously been
So
female
all of the
referees going on all the
VAR
time.
Officials are not.
No, they're a mix. I remember I was at the annual general meeting in Scottsdale in February, and I remember listening to Carlos Cordero say that there were going to be men involved because FIFA had not sufficiently trained them women or enough women to operate the system, and that was the option at that point. If you wanted to have VAR, you were going to have men in that doing that training process. So that's just kind of the way it is for this tournament. Obviously, going forward, that shouldn't be a problem, but we'll see what happens. It's again, this is a product of FIFA, just not paying attention, and or doing the right thing, and having
Right.
to come back at the last minute and get everything up to speed, or try to.
It just seems like so half-assed
It is. It was.
for as big as this tournament is. And, I mean, just dipping into a couple things, like something fun for me is I went to college with Christy Pierce Rampone.
Oh,
that you
yes.
see
Yeah, Christy
on
Rampone, yeah.
the FS1 broadcasts.
Mm-hmm.
She was everything basketball and soccer player at the college I went to, and would just like womp on people. And you would, again, it's like New Jersey at the beach. Every guy ever thought they were good at sports. And she was like, cool, let's go. And just like one day, basically the story is she was going to, I think, the NCAA tournament for the women's basketball team and got called into the U.S. camp for soccer and like left and actually went to go to the soccer team. And it's really interesting for me, like as somebody who's sat like here, with someone who's now this like vaunted, long time defender, really strong player on the national team, like getting to see her on TV. I'm like, I was in class with you that one time at 8:30, it's just interesting. And the amount of attention or energy that's been put into this World Cup, and it's funny because I have friends who are like, Women's World Cup. I'm like, great, like we can break that up. Like just it's the World Cup. Yeah. Let's just talk about it this way. The amount of energy, attention, media dollars, hell, that Nike ad, I could watch that shit all day, is like pretty awesome to see. And maybe that's where we get to kind of the name of the show for tonight's episode here. You have not as much insight as I do.
I
on this.
have none.
But there's this random Sounders tweet this afternoon, which we're like, SeatGeek probably made them tweet about this. And it's basically, I'm going to pull it up just because it's easier to read it than hem and haw around it. But
Assuming it hasn't been deleted yet.
so 3 hours ago, what time was this? So about 5 o'clock, they post this thing with hearts. Family Sounders. SeatGeek and MLS partnered together to highlight the power of female fans. Learn more. WeFan.SeatGeek.com. And it's just some photos of
Happy female Saunders fans.
Yeah. And to say the reaction has been negative would be not negative enough. And we don't need to get in the weeds on this because we could literally talk about it for hours. But the part for me that was the most, to borrow Sarah's word, cringeworthy, was like in the middle of all the efficacy that was this Women's World Cup. That happens, and then everyone's like, seriously? Like, we've had all this push for Stars for All, or, jerseys cut for multiple people, and all sorts of things. And then it's like, this random ticketing agency is like, let's talk about how women go to soccer games. Because I don't know about you, but as someone in the ECS section every game, it's like
Seems like there's a fair
a
amount.
whole lot of women or people who identify as female, and that's not new. It just seems super short-sighted marketing bullshit.
Yeah, I mean,
And you
it's
can be like, I have no comment. I'm gonna move on. But
yeah, I mean, I don't.
it just seems weird.
It's
to me.
it's a lot of it's very try hard. It's very try hard.
That's maybe the best thing you could say, and that we could actually probably stop there. It just feels like
I'm not-
trite or
yeah.
I don't know,
Paternalistic,
Like you missed the point.
Yeah, I
They're
mean,
like,
I
we also need to post about women liking soccer. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Try hard might be their best.
have
That's
you
the best.
been to a soccer game?
Yeah. Like, why is this coming out now? Would be
That.
one of my questions, or at all. But assuming you wanted to have some marketing focus on women, that's fine. But it seems that they may have just not really thought this through. This is one of those ideas that a bunch of dudes thought up, and they consulted none of the female executives that they don't have.
Wait. So what you're suggesting is men thought of a marketing thing and then posted it on the internet?
Without consulting maybe someone of the opposite gender who may have told them that this was a terrible idea.
You know, at SeatGeek,
Or at
we
least a
celebrate
mediocre
all
one.
fans. And our new research highlights the power of female MLS fans. Check out some of our findings.
I am not going to read that. Unless I wanted to write a story making fun of it, because that sounds
weird.
That sounds
Minnesota
absolutely
United
awful.
also tweeted an identical tweet, but with people wearing Minnesota United gear.
It's
This is a lot more. Forget the one nation, very much one team thing. Yeah.
I mean, this is obviously a marketing partnership, which obviously you know much more about than I do. I'm sure. I don't know if other leagues do similar things, or at least on this level of cringiness, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's I don't know. I mean, this is something I could see the NFL doing, for sure.
They make pink jerseys like it's their job. Oh, it is their job. Weird.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know what they. Maybe I will read that research just to see what nonsense they came up with. It seems like one of those surveys where they say women are just as interested in soccer as men.
And
And
we were like, have you been outside?
Yeah.
Women also go to soccer.
Yeah, they purchase jerseys. They drink beer. Shocker. Yes. So, I mean, like I said, I'm just not sure what the point of it was. I don't think there was a point. I think
What is sure?
Yeah. My guess is that this is just something they thought would make a good marketing promotion, and they didn't really put any more thought into it than that, other than trying to use it as a way to expand their reach into a different demographic. And that's about as much as I could. That's about as concisely as I could put
This is
it.
actually as constructive as we can possibly be right now.
Yeah.
I find it tone deaf AF, and that's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, again, the saying, you don't need to ascribe malice to that which can be explained with stupidity. I think that summarizes the motivations behind this.
Oh, God. Hunch Punch in the chat said, nothing wrong with dames getting into old sports ball. Now buy some merch. I have to tell you, there is somebody in MLS HQ right now, and they're like, well, yeah.
I don't know. That's
right.
really all I could.
We're
That's
gonna-
really all I got.
We're going to bridge for a second. Before I forget, Seawolves, they play in the rugby championship game Sunday, the 16th, 1 o'clock, San Diego.
All right.
So if you like yourself some rugby,
Someday I'll learn how the scoring works. It's one of my life goals.
respect the kicker, Mickey.
Yeah. That and cricket. Well, I'm going to commit myself to learning how to score
So it's
those
so
games
funny.
at some point.
This talk radio thing that I listen to, every so often I'll wake up and they're like, it's like the sports update every 20 minutes on any talk radio station here. And they're
Every
like,
5 on the 5s.
287 to whatever with 18 overs, and you're like,
I got nothing. I don't know.
What?
Yeah, I got
And your brain is like, is this a language that makes sense to
is
you
absolutely
at all?
calculus. Getting
These
calculus
words
flashbacks.
are words that I do understand. But are you winning or losing?
Yeah,
No one knows.
I certainly do not. I've never been able to figure it out, and I've tried.
Anywho, so it's about 8:33.
There is
So-
a couple of interesting things on
I was
the.
like, you're working on some stuff.
Yeah. Well, yes, is the short answer. But what I was going to say is the interesting thing on the World Cup, and it kind of dovetails into the men a little bit, but not really, is obviously Hope Solo has been out and about dropping bombs as she is wont to do.
Dude, they ran a great segment on her yesterday on FS1. I was shocked.
did they really?
Like, I think they reshot stingers with her that are new. I was like, this looks fresh.
Yeah, I mean, she obviously went after Jill Ellis. She's for those who may not have heard, she's doing punditry for BBC as part of the World Cup, and she basically went all in on Jill Ellis. Basically said she's not even a terrible coach, just an ineffectual one, and has no real impact on the women's ability to win games. That she basically falls apart at every opportunity. But the women are so good and talented that they basically can do it without her. It's kind of a varsity blues for the women's national team. And Ellis didn't engage, which is probably smart of her to do. There's nothing for her to be gained by doing that. And the interesting thing is that as this was all coming out and people were discussing it, Solo put out another tweet basically saying, "I find it interesting that people are discussing this, but no one's discussing my victory over the U.S. Soccer Federation and my lawsuit." Basically finding that the Federation is doing all manner of illegal things. And, the saying, everyone's got an angle that they're playing up, and she certainly does as well. She's certainly had it out for the U.S. Soccer Federation for, ever since they terminated her contract. And she certainly wants to make it known that she's not pleased with how they have treated her specifically, or women's soccer generally. There's the equal pay lawsuits that are going through the system, and nothing's going to happen on those while the World Cup's coming, because I think both sides were basically like, that's just a terrible idea. We don't want to distract from the tournament. But the tournament's only going to last for a month, and then they will be back to fighting with each other. And I've talked to people in the Federation, and their philosophy on the women's suit is basically that they don't think they've really done anything wrong. They think they've negotiated in good faith with the women's national team. They signed a collective bargaining agreement, and therefore a deal's a deal essentially, and there are they should live with it. And there's a couple of things about that. The deal that the women signed, the national team women are paid by the Federation. Their salaries, their NWSL salaries, are paid by the Federation, which is something that the men don't have. The men, you either play and get money or you don't. The problem, obviously, is there's some fairly significant disparities in those payments for the men. I think Solo, when she sued, she put out a chart, which I don't have in front of me. I won't pull it up, but essentially Solo basically said, I got it right here. For friendly,
I'm shocked that you have that available.
The women for friendlies get $1,350 for a win. The men get $5,000 for a loss, no matter who the opponent is. No matter what the ranking of the opponent that the women play, they get $1,350. The men can get up to $18,000 nearly for a win against a top 10 opponent or Mexico. And
that seems like
that's massive
a lot.
change. Yeah. I mean, again, the men aren't getting that if they're not called up to the team or playing in the games.
Right.
So, some of this stuff balances out to some degree, but not to the degree that explains these differences. And again, the women get $15,000 for making the World Cup. The men get $70,000 for making the World Cup. There's no real reason for that disparity.
Like just for making the roster.
Yeah, just for making the roster. 70 versus 15. And then there's bonuses for games that the women don't get. The men, there's a massive player pool. Again, the men would get, if they won the World Cup, the men would get $9.5 million to split between them, which is a big load of scratch. But of course, the men are never winning the World Cup, so that's one of those performance incentives that people put into contracts that never going to reach. But the women, for getting first place, got $75,000, which is, again, not nothing. But, again, it's a massive disparity between the men, even though the men are never going to see.
But that's the,
see that.
make the roster number, basically. The men's, 67,000 or whatever.
Make the roster. Yedlin got $67,000 in 2014.
If the women win the World Cup, they make 75.
Yeah.
That's dumb.
Yeah. And so...
Because, by the way, like Brazil, all of the national team should just start wearing 3 stars at this point because one side is way better than the other and is going to dominate internationally for quite some time at this point. So suck it up.
Yeah, and the amount of money that this would cost, again, these things are not completely equal because, again, the men are not getting a salary from U.S. Soccer. And, people I want to say, Hope Solo's probably making, or not Hope Solo, Alex Morgan. I looked it up at some point, and so she's probably making $250 a year from the federation just for being on the national team, or just for, being a part of the national team roster. So, again, these things are not completely apples and apples. There are some disparities that are just different between the women and the men, but the bottom line is there are some significant things that there's not really an explanation for the disparity, and some of those things have been improved, like the per diems. I think the women are actually getting more than the men now, whereas before they were not. So. Again, the federation, that goes to the federation saying, hey, we've been doing this in good faith and working on these things, and we don't know exactly what the women want, because do they want equal money per se, or do they prefer to have their salaries? Because that's a good bit of stability, because, again, if you don't make the national team, you don't get any of this on the men's side. And so there's a certain amount of, again, stability by having your salary paid by the federation. Of course, the women's team is probably a bit more insular than the men, in that it's the same group of women who are typically called in for camps, and they're basically only not being called in either if it's injury or they've aged out and physically can't do the job anymore. Again, but they tend to hang on because who am I thinking of that just retired? This is terrible. From the who just got voted into the Hall of Fame. This is embarrassing.
Abby Wambach.
Yeah, Wambach. Thank you.
Yeah.
She was around forever, even probably past the point where she was really contributing a lot. Again, she went to the bench in the 2015 World Cup because she wasn't up to it anymore, but she still made the team. And then they called in a couple of veterans who really hadn't played with the women's national team for this World Cup as well. So, again, it just goes to the women's team is a bit more insular, and you get the same people called in every time, whereas it exists to some degree with the men, but not quite as much. They're more likely to start booting you out if you can't do it anymore. Save the favorites. There are the favorites there.
Is the victory tour that the women's team had
made a lot of money for the federation.
I paid a lot of money to sit, midfield, third row, whatever, at CenturyLink. It was a low 3-digit number, but a 3-digit number nonetheless. For random friendly for the men's team, I'm going to pay about the same amount of money to go to the game.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't ever feel like that money follows through. So, TV money and all that. Like, I get it. But at the end of the day, like, there's A, efficacy, which the men's team has a lack of for years now. And B, like, the throughput, at least in, like, soccer-loving markets, is no different. Like,
Yeah.
you're going to get 30, 40,000 people for a random women's match, 30, 40,000 people for a random men's match.
You're not getting that for the men these days.
Well, especially not right now.
Yeah.
But
Interestingly, so I'll get a little bit into the pay thing just because there were a couple of numbers that were pretty interesting. So when the women filed their lawsuit, they talked a lot about how much their success had helped the federation.
Yeah.
And so one of their examples was in the lawsuit is at the end of fiscal year 2016, so that's 2015 to 2016, so that includes the World Cup, the federation was reporting a loss of about $500,000, which, again, based on their budget is nothing. It's a rounding error essentially, but thanks to the success of the women who were just coming off the World Cup, the federation turned a profit of $17 million, nearly $18 million, and that was largely based on the strength of the Victory Tour and the revenues that they brought in. So, $18 million basically
silly.
the women brought in 2015, 2016, which largely turned around the federation's bottom line for that year. Now, the federation talks about, the men were off cycle at that point, which is true. And they also point out that, the Copa America that they hosted in 2016 brought in a lot of money. It brought in, I think, $180
great.
million.
You made money off
Yeah.
Leo Messi.
Yeah.
Like, cool.
Yeah. So, those are the kind of responses that they have. But it's just, the women certainly have more than pulled their weight, as it were, when it comes to, bringing in money and relevance and sponsorships and marketing, et cetera, to the U.S. Soccer Federation. The fact that the federation can use a tournament like Copa to kind of goose those numbers to numbers that the women couldn't reach is not, is arguably beside the point.
Business ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Totally. Like,
Yeah.
any given year, things change. But at a minimum, in cycle, even if all they did was take $1 million and split it by 20 people, like, it would change the numbers dramatically from where they are right now. And it just seems like we're going to argue for the sake of argument at this point. It doesn't make sense. Like, the women's national team in this country is, bluntly, way more popular. Like, forget Ayo.
Especially at this point.
And all the rest of it. Like, look at just the general day-to-day attention they get.
Mm-hmm.
It feels different. Like day to day. Look at Twitter.
I would say it's not even different. I would say it's not even close at this point, especially on the marketing / sponsorship side. The women just far outstrip the men. I mean, again, taking into account that we're in the middle of a World Cup cycle for the women. What sponsorships do you see for the men, generally speaking, the men's national team, just on random TV or even during the Gold Cup, which is now upon us?
There's nothing.
There's nothing. It's
like, it might as well not exist.
Yeah. It's
like, it feels like we're in a friendly cycle right now.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yeah, maybe there's some Continental or Pepsi or Coke commercials coming down the pike for the men as the Gold Cup gets started, but I doubt it, and I doubt you'll see any because, again, that maybe goes to this stature of the Gold Cup these days.
Yeah.
And
different discussion.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
But even so, like, Nats are Nats are Nats are Nats. Men or women, whatever you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to tell you, I give a shit 10x more about the women's team as the men's, and I have for a while. And part of it's just the smug behavior around the men's team.
It's
and
also the
players
massive
are more
failures.
interesting.
Yeah. So that actually raises a good point. And again, Hope Solo, lover or hater, she was someone that people would talk about. And so, who is like that on the men's national team at this point?
Clint Dempsey.
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
Well, and he did a fair amount of commercials here and there. Donovan, to be fair to him,
Not
Donovan.
even advertising wise, just like attitude
Yeah,
like,
having something to say.
at that level.
Yeah.
I don't know who is like that right now.
For the men, nobody. They're
I can't think of
not even
anyone.
Not even Pulisic, and he's going to be overseas anyway for the majority of the rest of his career. And so it's just they're in the malaise
That's
to
the
use
right word,
to
too.
use the Sounders phrase from earlier. The U.S. men's national team is in a malaise of sorts, and I'm not sure what is going to get them out of it, short of winning. If they can win the Gold Cup and beat Mexico in the final, then that's going to soothe a lot of nerves
Sure.
on that. But I wouldn't expect that to happen right now. And if
It
that
just
doesn't
feels
happen
like
right
all
now,
up the men's national team, like from the literally how they source players to how they source coaches to how they develop tactics to how they market their team, all up feels completely wrong, broken.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll
and
s-
that's super weird.
yeah. So I'm doing a little bit of research for a story, which would be a fairly big bombshell, but it's still in the early.
You heard it here
Yes.
first.
It just goes to the dysfunction in the federation itself. Down
It is
to
at that level, though, right?
it is at that level. I'm trying to find the email. I'm not going to share it online because sorry guys.
You don't want to just stream that?
No, it's very sensitive. I can't find it, but it's from a source inside the federation that just says that the whole thing is broken right now, to put it bluntly, and they don't see it getting
From
better.
C. Cordero.
And so it's just at this point, again, much like the men, I don't know where this is where they're going to pull out of it at this point. And once the women have, knock on wood, done well in the World Cup, if they do well in the World Cup, and they have to get by France in the quarterfinals, so that's going to be a major problem. Then again, all of the issues that are being papered over potentially by the World Cup, Women's World Cup, and to a much lesser extent the Gold Cup, all of those issues are going to come roaring back because you're going to have the lawsuits, get out of neutral and go forward.
Yeah.
And then you've got a bunch of other lawsuits. Keep in mind the Federation is being sued by at least 6 or 7 different entities. And so, come August, September, who knows what's going to happen. And it could potentially not be very good at all. And I would be concerned about where the Federation is at this point.
Do you feel like should the women win out? Like, does that help, or does it not matter?
Oh, I think it helps. You win the World Cup. It absolutely matters. Because again, they'll be.
I mean,
able
it
to do
matters to them because they kicked ass.
Yeah, I mean, but you're still going to be able to do the victory tours. You're going to have all the publicity from
Subsidize
that.
the men's national team.
Yes, for I would say for this year, absolutely. I mean, I guess the Gold Cup typically makes money, so
Sure.
So
Well, I mean,
there's
if you
that.
sell your tickets for like $150, then cool.
Yeah, that's just crazy. We'll see. And someone from the audience says if only people show up. So people showed up to these first 2 friendlies, but after these disastrous results, again, that may kill the. If you already bought your tickets, you're not going to get a refund, but it might kill walk-up sales and things like
Sure.
that. And then if the men's national team has anywhere near the type of awful performance that they had in the last 2 games, again, if they lose to Guyana, then you might as well just close up shop and just go home at that point. But
Like as a country,
Yes,
we should
yeah.
just start over.
pretty
Like, I
much
feel
as a
that way
soccering country,
completely,
yeah. As
But
a
if
soccer country,
goes that way,
yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah. So, if they lose in the finals to Mexico, then obviously we're not going to say that everything's, a disaster. But if you don't make it out of the knockout rounds or you lose in the quarterfinals, then there's going to be a lot of questions that are going to be asked. And you can only say World Cup 2026 so many times before people start tuning you out.
I mean,
So,
don't say that.
Yeah. Well, we still
Although
have.
it could be the next World Cup, depending on how things are going over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and who knows?
So-
yeah.
It's about 8:53. We have a number of predictions we could make.
Yes.
So we've got U.S. women versus Thailand tomorrow at noon Pacific. They also play again Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific versus Chile. So between now and the next time we'll be here.
Yeah. And then we've got a Sounders game, obviously.
Sounders versus Portland Wednesday, 7:30, Estadio Cheney. 7:30 p.m.
Yes, correct.
This week. And I mean that's all that's important.
yeah, we're getting too
so-
far ahead of ourselves otherwise.
So let's start with the United States. So
against
Thailand
Thailand?
tomorrow. You said goal. What'd you say? Goal
Fest.
extravaganza.
Yeah, Goal Fest. I mean,
Extravaganza is a good word though.
yeah, it is.
So how do you feel about? There was a little bit of feature on this yesterday. Nair, new World Cup keeper.
Lindsay Nair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the national team, she's got 40 some odd caps. It's not like
Yeah.
she's brand new.
Yeah, I
Do
mean,
you think it makes a difference, like mentally?
mentally, no. I think she'll be fine. I think they'll be fine. They've got, there were some, I wouldn't say questionable roster decisions, but at least decisions that kind of made you raise your eyebrow. But I think they've got just well too much quality to even have a concern here. So I would say like 5-1.
So you're going to say Goal Fest tomorrow.
Goal Fest tomorrow, absolutely.
And if you want to watch the game, you can go to the 90.
That's correct.
It's free. Bring your lunch. Hang out. It's a good time. I went today. I got to talk to Taylor Graham. It's nice to shoot the shit with former Sounders players. It's kind of cool.
I'm debating Sounders have training tomorrow, which doesn't.
I mean, is anyone even going to be there?
That is an excellent question. I mean, they are usually there even when it's a Champions League or the World Cup for that matter. So there will be people there. I may skip out and just check out the women's national
What
team.
time is training?
Training's usually at 10:30.
Oh, yeah. You could totally make it.
Yeah, it's just trying to get from one place to the other is kind of a pain in the ass. And I did kind of want to go to the 90, so. But the only way to do that, the only way to really do that is to only be there for 10 minutes or skip out on practice. So it'll probably be a last-minute decision. If I decide to go to practice,
the Mickey Turner
Yes.
might be
Yes,
at
possible.
the 90 tomorrow.
possibly.
The Mickey
Otherwise, Buffalo Wild Wings, probably.
So let's skip ahead. Sunday,
Yeah.
Chile, 9 a.m. Pacific.
I don't know a whole lot about Chile. The South American women's soccer product is still a little bit underdeveloped. So I would just say, again, the quality
That's
of the
playing
national
in
team.
Paris too, by the way.
Oh, nice. Just the quality, I think, of the U.S. I would say a 3-0 win. That's what I go with.
3-0.
I think
All right.
I think they'll basically cruise through. Barring some VAR shenanigans, they should cruise to these first two victories.
It's soccer. There's gonna be shenanigans.
Yeah.
Come on. So let's back up to Wednesday.
Oof.
Are you attending as press?
I will be credentialed for this
Okay.
particular
So what does
game.
that mean? You won't be super drunk in the
Yeah,
second?
pretty much.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm not overly enthusiastic about this game. Part of it is just I'm tired of playing Portland in these games, and so the fact
we
that
were all
it's
super shocked when
Portland's
they drew
name,
Portland.
yeah. But it is a bit offset by I'm looking forward to being at Cheney for the game, so that's gonna.
I think it's going to be
Yeah.
a
I think
loaded
it's-
house.
Yeah, it's going to be a full house, more than they would ever be able to fit in Starfire, and the crowd should be very rowdy. The weather's going to be fantastic, so that all offsets the fact that
I mean,
we're
unless
playing
you're
Portland
from Seattle,
again.
and then it's going to be too hot.
Yeah, that's also
So
true.
you're saying 10-0 Sounders.
The lineup is going to be mostly first team. I don't think you'll see any Defiancy
Okay.
defiancy things
So
going on.
They're going to go as you think they go as big as they can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But the question is, what does Portland bring? Because I think they have less players on international duty, so they have the better ability to come up here with a stronger squad. So, if Valeri and Fernandez are playing, that's going to be very, very
If
tough
you're
for the
them, though,
Sounders.
don't you just go all in?
The Timbers?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Why not?
Why? Yeah, they've got 3 weeks off, one game in 3 weeks.
Or you play Open Cup next
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
Right.
But that aside, they
You have no other MLS matches.
no other
Like,
MLS matches.
Why would you not play your players?
Yeah, you could play all of your best players, and that would allow you to potentially get one over on your rivals, even if it's not an MLS game. It's still it's a trophy, a way to get a trophy, and Portland certainly doesn't have nearly the trophy case that the Sounders do. So again,
prediction.
I think the Sounders are probably going to be on the back foot for this game. I think if Portland brings their A game, their A lineup. If it's a T2 ish lineup, then I think the Sounders have enough to get it done. If it's this Timbers A lineup, or as much as their A lineup as they can have, then the Sounders are going to be on the back foot, I think, the entire game. And I would say it's going to be tough for them to get a result in that situation.
So you're going to not predict a specific score.
I'm going to say an extra
TBD.
Yeah. I'm going to say an extra time if the game's going to extra time.
Extra time.
Yeah.
That sounds exhausting already. Don't take the 590.
Yeah. Do not take the buses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to say 2-1 Sounders.
Either way.
Multiple cards. Fuck Portland.
Does the game get called for lack of personnel?
That would be super cool.
What's the limit? I think you have to have 7. Seven is the minimum.
I believe it is. Yeah. It might get called for lack of people in the stands because we were all ejected.
Yes.
Owen Goal is not playing on Wednesday. I want no part of Owen Goal. All right. So good prediction. Ish.
Ish.
So
I'm copping out a little bit.
It's about 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mickey Turner. Thanks,
pleasure as
crew here at
always.
the Berliner. Thanks, Berliner. 4th and Main.
Downtown Rain Curtain.
Head of the curve. 3rd and Main. I don't know. We are near a dragon. Anyway, thanks to the Berliner. We will be back here a week from tonight. We tried to get Dave Clark here tonight, but he's super cool and just
Too cool for school now.
doesn't like us anymore, I guess. Ish.
It was bound to happen.
Yeah, whatever. He grew up. He's better than us.
Yeah.
Any last words?
Nah.
Well, I'm sorry. Any final words for tonight's show?
Yep. No. I got nothing.
Wow.
You caught me off guard. I didn't have anything profound.
Hashtag we fan. OUIFAN. It's French.
Allegedly.
Anyway, go U.S. women's national
Yes.
team.
Yep. There you go.
From
There's a good
France.
final word. Go USA.
What? Also, all the underdogs. Anyway, should we sign off or should we just let the show happen for 2-3 more hours?
I think it's time to go.
All right, we're out. Good night. Good night.